Oh my God, AE utilization is so important and no one talks about it. So there is this idea that if you're an account executive, you're one of these Patagonia vest wearing people who don't make outbound dials and you just do the complex negotiation and sales tactics, you're supposed to be doing essentially five things as a salesperson in this exact order after you've woken up, after you've brushed your teeth, so on and so forth. First one, you're supposed to be closing deals. Second thing, you're supposed to be negotiating deals. Third one, you're supposed to be submitting proposals to then negotiate to then close deals. Fourth, you're supposed to be doing discovery calls or post-disco sort of negotiation calls. And then lastly, you're supposed to be prospecting. Those are the five things. So most AEs, they don't want to prospect anymore because they're past that. So now you're down to four things. The disco call aspect is the thing that's interesting to me. If you think about a disco call being a half an hour and you figure there's 15 minutes of prep and 15 minutes of post, you have about an hour per disco call. In an 8-hour day, if you do 75% of your working day with core responsible activities, you have capacity for about 6 disco calls. 6 disco calls times 5 days is 30 disco calls a week, times 4.34 weeks in a month on average, and you're up over 120 disco calls per month. Most of these AEs that we're looking at in these programs are doing like low double digits, like 10, 20% of that number. And they're so grossly underutilized that is dragging their overall sales and marketing program down. The reason why is they don't do any prospecting, or if they do it really poorly. So what that effectively does is it robs the demand gen program of resources that is supposed to be generating the demand for the pipeline management group to be processing. And so ultimately, this is one of the single most financially devastating aspects that we see in a sales and marketing program. And it happens almost every single company that we interact with, we find this problem. And it makes sense why too, because as an SDR, you want out of that position within 12 to 18 months, right? You want a Patagonia vest, you want a title change, and you want a new office, right? There is a reality that as all these SDRs are going through this process, companies want to keep good salespeople or perceived good salespeople, so they moved them into AE roles. AEs start immediately pulling away from demand gen activities, and this is what starts this problem. Fast forward a couple years down the road, and you have these horrifically underutilized AE departments. You don't have enough demand to satisfy the AEs, and it's just a mess. And that's really why AE utilization is so important. My sort of personal take on this is that you should be oversubscribed on demand, and you should be undersubscribed on pipeline management. You should have the best people possibly doing closing, right? You don't want any average people in pipeline management. Those folks essentially should be making more money, being more effective, more efficient, and you just got to make sure you're not sort of putting all your eggs into too few people, so to speak. But really, I want all of the resourcing on the demand gen side of it. That gives you the most flexibility, gives you the most at-bats, and that's where you don't have sort of bad prospects coming into a pipeline management process. They're just rejected at the beginning of it. And that's what AE utilization is and why it's so important.